Welcome to today's reading from the Krishna book. We are on the chapter Uddhava visits Vrindavan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Requested by Lord Krishna, Uddhava immediately left on his chariot and carried the message to Gokul. He approached Vrindavan at sunset when the cows were returning home from the pasturing grounds. Uddhava and his chariot were covered by the dust raised by the hooves of the cows. He saw bulls running after the cows for mating. Other cows with overladen milk bags were running after their calves to feed them with milk. Uddhava saw the entire land of Vrindavan was filled with white cows and their calves, running here and there over Gokul, and he could hear the sound of milking. Every residential house in Vrindavan was decorated for the worship of the sun god and the fire god and for the reception of guests, cows, brahmanas and demigods. Every home was sanctified by lights and incense. All over Vrindavan there were nice gardens filled with flowers and sounds of humming bees and singing birds. The lakes were filled with the lotus flowers and the ducks and swans. Uddhava entered the house of Nand Maharaj and was received as the representative of Vasudeva. Nand Maharaj offered him a sitting place and sat down with him to ask about the messages from Krishna, Balram, and other family members in Mathura. He could understand that Uddhava was a very confidential friend of Krishna's and therefore must have come with good messages. "My dear Uddhava," he said, "how is my friend Vasudeva enjoying life? He is now released from the prison of Kamsa and he is now with his friends and his children, Krishna and Balram. So he must be very happy. Tell me about him and his welfare. We are also very happy that Kamsa, the most sinful demon, has been killed. He was always envious of the family of the Yadus, his relatives. Now because of his sinful activities, he is dead and gone along with all his brothers. Please let us know whether Krishna now remembers his father and mother and his friends and companions in Vrindavan. Does he like to remember his cows, his gopis, his Govardhan hill, his pasturing grounds in Vrindavan? Or has he now forgotten all these? Is there any possibility of his coming back to his friends and relatives so we can again see his beautiful face? With its raised nose and lotus-like eyes, we remember how he saved us from the forest fire, how he saved us from the great snake Kaliya in the Yamuna, and how he saved us from so many other demons. And we simply think of how much we are obliged to him for giving us protection in many dangerous situations. My dear Uddhava, when we think of Krishna's beautiful face and eyes and his different activities here in Vrindavan, we become so overwhelmed that all our activities cease. We simply think of Krishna, how he used to smile and how he looked upon us with grace. When we go to the banks of Yamuna or the lakes of Vrindavan or near Govardhan hill or the pasturing fields, we see that the impressions of Krishna's footprints are still on the surface of the earth. We remember him playing in those places because he was constantly visiting them. When his appearance within our minds becomes manifest, we immediately become absorbed in thought of him. We think, therefore, that that Krishna and Balram may be chief demigods in heavens who have appeared before us like ordinary boys to execute particular duties on earth. This was foretold by Garg Muni when making Krishna's horoscope, that Krishna were not a great personality, how could he have killed Kamsa, who possessed the strength of 10,000 elephants? Besides Kamsa, there were strong wrestlers as well as giant elephant. Kuvalyapira, Krishna killed all these animals and demons just as a lion kills an ordinary animal. How wonderful it is that Krishna took in one hand the big heavy bow made of 3 joined palm trees and broke it very quickly. How wonderful it is that for 7 days continuously he held up Govardhan hill with one hand. How wonderful it is that he has killed all the demons like Pralambasur, Dhenukasur, Arishtasur, Trinavrat and Bakasur. They were so strong that even the demigods in the heavenly planets were afraid of them, but Krishna killed them as easily as anything. While describing the uncommon activities of Krishna before Uddhava, Nanda Maharaj gradually became overwhelmed and could no longer speak. As for Mother Yashoda, she sat by the side of her husband and heard the pastimes of Krishna without speaking. She simply cried incessantly and milk poured from her breast. When Uddhava saw Maharaj so extraordinarily overwhelmed with thoughts of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and when he experienced that extraordinary affection for them, he also became overwhelmed and spoke as follows. My dear Mother Yashoda and Nand Maharaj, you are the most respectable among the human beings because no one but you can meditate in such transcendental ecstasy. Uddhav continued, Balram and Krishna are the original personalities of Godhead from whom the cosmic manifestation emanates. They are chief among all personalities. Each of them is both the material and the efficient cause of this material creation. Material nature is conducted by the Purusha incarnations, who all act under Krishna and Balram. By their partial representation, they enter the hearts of all living entities. They are the source of all knowledge and all forgetfulness also. This is confirmed by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter. I am present in everyone's heart and I cause one to remember and forget. I am the original compiler of the Vedanta and I am the actual knower of the Vedas. Uddhava continued, if at the time of death a person can fix his pure mind upon Krishna, even for a moment after giving up his material body, he becomes eligible to appear in his original spiritual body, just as the sun rises with all illumination. Passing from his life in this way, he immediately enters into the spiritual kingdom, Vaikuntha. This is the result of Krishna consciousness. If we practice Krishna consciousness in this present body while in a healthy condition and in good mind, simply by chanting the holy Mahamantra Hare Krishna, we will have every possibility of fixing the mind upon Krishna at the time of death. If we do this, then our lives become successful without any doubt. But if we keep our minds always absorbed in fruitive activities for material enjoyment, then naturally at the time of death we shall think of such activities and again be forced to enter material conditioned bodies to suffer the threefold miseries of material existence. Therefore, to remain always absorbed in Krishna consciousness was the standard of the inhabitants of Vrndavana, as exhibited by Maharaj Nanda, Yashoda and the gopis. If we can simply follow in their footsteps, even to a minute proportion, our lives will surely become successful and we shall enter the spiritual kingdom, Vaikuntha. My dear Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, Uddhav continued, you have thus fixed your minds wholly and solely upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, whose transcendental form is the cause of impersonal Brahman. The Brahman effulgence is only the bodily rays of Narayan, and you are always absorbed in ecstatic thought of Krishna and Balram. What pious activities remain for you to perform? I have brought a message from Krishna that he will very soon come back to Vrindavan and satisfy you by his personal presence. Krishna promised that he would come back to Vrindavan after finishing his business in Mathura. This promise he will surely fulfill. I therefore request the two of you, who are the best among all who are fortunate, not to be aggrieved on account of Krishna's absence. You are already perceiving his presence 24 hours a day, yet he will come and see you very soon. Actually, he is present everywhere and in everyone's heart, just as fire is present in wood. Since Krishna is a super soul, no one is his enemy, no one is his friend, no one is equal to him, and no one is lower or higher than he. He actually has no father, mother, brother or relative, nor does he require society, friendship and love. He does not have a material body like us. He never appears or takes birth as an ordinary human being. He does not appear in higher or lower species of life like ordinary living entities who are forced to take birth on account of their previous fruitive activities. He appears by his internal potency just to give protection to his devotees. He is never influenced by the modes of material nature. But when he appears within this material world, he seems to act like an ordinary living entity under the spell of the modes of material nature. But in fact, he is the overseer of this material creation. And while remaining unaffected by the material modes of nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, he creates, maintains, and dissolves the whole cosmic manifestation. We wrongly look upon Krishna and Balram as ordinary human beings, just as whirling men see the whole world whirling around them. The personality of Godhead is no one's son. He is actually everyone's father, mother, and supreme controller. There is no doubt of this. Whatever is already being experienced, whatever is not being experienced, whatever already exists, does not exist or will exist in future, whatever is the smallest and whatever is the biggest have no existence outside the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything rests in him and he is untouched by everything manifested. Nanda and Uddhava thus passed the whole night discussing Krishna. In the morning, the gopis prepared for morning arti by lighting their lamps and sprinkling butter mixed with yogurt. After finishing their Mangal arti, they engaged themselves in churning butter from yogurt. While the gopis were thus engaged, the lamps reflected on their ornaments made the ornaments still brighter. Their churning rods, their arms, their earrings, their bangles, everything moved. And the kunkuma powder gave their faces a saffron luster compared to the rising sun. While making sounds by churning, they also sang the glories of Krishna. The two sound vibrations mixed together, ascended to the sky and sanctified the whole atmosphere. After sunrise, the gopis, as usual, came to offer their respect to Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. But when they saw the golden chariot of Uddhava at the door, they began to inquire among themselves, what was that chariot and to whom did it belong? Some of them inquired whether Akrur, who had taken away Krishna, had returned. They were not very pleased with Akrur because, being engaged in the service of Kamsa, he had taken lotus-eyed Krishna away to the city of Mathura. All the gopis conjectured that Akrur might have come again to fulfill another cruel plan. But they thought, we are now dead bodies without our supreme master Krishna. What further act can Akrur perpetrate against these dead bodies? While they were talking in this way, Uddhava finished his morning ablutions, prayers and chanting and came before them. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 46th chapter of Krishna. Uddhava visits Vrndavana. Chapter 47. Delivery of the message of Krishna to the gopis. When the gopis saw Uddhava, they observed that his features were almost exactly resembled those of Krishna, and they could understand that he was a great devotee of Krishna's. They didn't know that Uddhava was the first cousin of Krishna. His arms were very long and his eyes were just like the petals of the lotus flowers. He was dressed in yellow garments and wore a garland of lotus flowers. His face was very beautiful, having achieved the liberation of Sarupya and thus having the same bodily features as the Lord. Uddhava looked almost like Krishna. In Krishna's absence, the gopis had been coming dutifully to visit Mother Yashoda's house early in the morning. They knew that Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda were always grief-stricken, and they had made it their first duty to come and pay their respects to the most exalted elderly personalities of Vrndavana. Seeing the friends of Krishna, Nanda and Yashoda would remember Krishna himself and be satisfied, and the gopis also would be pleased by seeing Nanda and Yashoda. When the gopis saw that Uddhava was representing Krishna even in his bodily features, they thought that he must be a soul completely surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They began to contemplate. Who is this boy who looks just like Krishna? He has the same eyes like lotus petals and same raised nose and beautiful face, and he is smiling in the same way. In all respects, he resembles Krishna. Shyama Sundar, the beautiful blackish boy, he is even dressed exactly like Krishna. Where has this boy come from? Who is this fortunate girl who has him for her husband? Thus they talked among themselves. They were very anxious to know about him, and because they were simple, unsophisticated village girls, they surrounded Uddhava. So we will end our reading today here, and we shall continue again on Monday. So Uddhav has come to Vrindavan, and the gopis are very curious if there is some message for them from Krishna when he's going to come and visit Vrindavan, because this is the main goal of the gopis, to revere Krishna, to think of Krishna, to remember him, to do service, devotional service for Krishna. And they are, as it is described, they are merely dead bodies in the absence of Krishna and Balram in the Vrindavan Vrajabhumi. So let us again continue this on Monday, and I wish you all a very blissful weekend ahead. We have Amrendra Prabhu's Katha starting from tonight, and I will try to upload it onto the group. It will be available on ISKCON Birmingham Facebook as well, if you don't want to wish to watch on the Zoom. So thank you for watching and joining me in this Krishna Katha, both of you, Shamita and Narayan Keshav. Hare Krishna.